Hello, everyone, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin selling pressure, who or what could cause large sell offs, and who is causing the large sell off right now. Because I guess all of you are interested. How long is it going to last? So, we're going to look at Grayscale first because it is kind of correct that they are a large part of the reason for sell-off. We'll just look at the AUMs last week, inflows and outflows. Looking at this chart, Grayscale had US millions of dollars, 2.806 millions of dollars of outflows. And this is the month-to-day outflows and week-to-day outflows. And you can see pretty much everything happened last week. Negative 227, basically $2.2 billion of outflows last week, 2.8 billion in the month, 2.87 billion in the year, vast majority of it last week. But you will see that these iShares and Fidelity make up actually most of that. And if you actually look at the total, it's actually pretty much a wash. There was a total of net negative $20.8 million, which is very, very low. Basically no movement at all. So basically iShares, basically like BlackRock, Fidelity, and other bought up all the Grayscale investments. And then some of the others offset the rest. And we have almost no movement in the Bitcoin ETF. So if there's so little movement, why are we actually going down? It's because people are buying the rumors, selling the news, and there's like profit scalping as well. Because the net flows for the ETFs are pretty much equal. People were just flowing out of Grayscale into BlackRock, Fidelity, and the other 10 ETFs. This was expected because, as we've said before, Grayscale's fees are far higher than the others, and they're just moving into funds with lower fees. Now, Grayscale, for its part, said that it's not actually changing the fees because they don't think that a lot of these ETFs are going to survive because they're doing loss leaders. And they're probably right, although BlackRock and Fidelity, I'm sure, will actually survive. Now, another big part of this that you guys have to know is that almost half the Grayscale sales last week were because of FTX. Remember, FTX owes their customers a lot of money, and they sold about $1 billion last week of Grayscale shares. FTX had a lot of Grayscale. They sold 22 million shares. So out of the 2.2 billion outflows last week, FTX was 1 billion of them. So the outflows this week should actually slow down, at least from FTX. But that doesn't mean there's other sources, and I don't know if BlackRock and Fidelity are going to buy nearly as much this week. Now, outside of the FTX stuff, how much could Grayscale actually sell? Well, if they sold all their shares, it could go on until April, basically. But I don't think they're going to sell all of the shares because Grayscale basically just got the ETF. I don't think they're actually exiting the business. And I do think some of their sales were basically people taking profits because they had a giant discount at the beginning of last year. The discount's gone, plus Bitcoin has massive appreciation right now. So some were probably just taking profits. But I don't think everything's going to sell out. So basically, I think in a couple of weeks, maybe like 3 or 4 weeks, Grayscale sales will actually just more or less stop. I do think like the people that want to exit Grayscale for lower fees in 3 or 4 weeks will actually exit Grayscale. And I do actually think buy the rumor, sell the news will most likely be stopping around this week, maybe mid next week. And I think BlackRock and Fidelity will basically cancel out Grayscale selling as well. And the other ETFs, I don't think they're actually big enough to actually matter for inflows and outflows. So basically, like Grayscale is selling to BlackRock and Fidelity, but Grayscale, I think, might be selling spot market because they need to liquidate the money immediately. And BlackRock and Fidelity, I'm sure, are buying OTC. So that's a net negative effect right there on the Bitcoin price, which is no good, obviously. There is one other trigger, that's the MTGOX thing. They've started paying some of it back, I think, but a lot of the payments back, either in kind or cash, is going to be, I think, like before Q3 of this year. So there might be a little bit of that selling. Those transactions are much, much harder to actually pinpoint, honestly, because we don't exactly know when they're actually going to do it. And we don't really know if they're going to just hand back the cash or do in kind. If there's any major wallet movements, I'll be sure to tell you guys. And there might not be that much of an effect at all from MTGOX. We've been talking about this for a very long time. Like every time there's like a little bit of fear for their news, and then like that causes a bit of fear and a bit of a sell-off. But after all, it's not like any physical effect. I'm guessing it's going to be the same thing, but it is quite a large batch of coins from MT Gox that might come out onto the market. It'll probably flow out very, very slowly. And I think the deadline was like late in 2024. So it actually might be second half of this year too, although a lot of analysts saying are first half of this year. Not really so sure about that, but that is another source, and that is a large source of coins. Like I said, buy the rumor, sell the news. I expect that to basically subside like this week and like maybe like part of next week. I think the major selling was probably last week. Like people sell the news pretty much immediately at these big events. And as time drags on, they sell less and less. But of course, there's a lot of like longs that are actually being liquidated as well. But the shorts are actually building up, and there could be a big short liquidation sometime soon. That could send the price back up. If the price goes back up, probably wait a little bit before you buy in, because it'll probably come back down again and even out. And we might actually just go back and forth before the halving. Another source, obviously, is the miners right now. The miners, you can see their Bitcoin reserves are still dropping. They've been dropping all of this year, but specifically since October, they've actually been dropping. And they might actually be increasing their sales right now because we're leading up to the halving. The hash rate has fallen a little bit, but still very, very expensive to buy to mine Bitcoins. And I think some of the smaller miners, a lot of them are probably going to drop out of the game right now because it's not going to be sustainable for them to mine Bitcoin. This is one of the Bitcoin's problems. You need to be more and more efficient as the blockchain goes on. And I think only the big wigs are going to be efficient enough because you need like low upstart costs and low maintenance costs plus low electricity costs for it to be really worth it. So like guys like Riot, Marathon, they can probably keep mining, but individual miners will probably drop out. I think there's like a really cheap electricity place in like Kazakhstan or something where individual miners still might live on. But in the United States with the electricity prices, I think it's going to be very difficult for people to actually maintain the equipment and keep mining the Bitcoin. So some of them might be selling out, getting out of the business altogether. That would not surprise me one bit if they were trying to get out of the business altogether because it's just not that profitable anymore for them. So I don't know how much. I think the reserves are like 1.8 million Bitcoins. It's gone down 60, 70K since like October basically. And they might continue selling up until like fairly close to the halving. So that might be another source of selling pressure. Not really sure how much, but it's kind of constant. There's always been miners selling pressure, but in the first week of the ETFs, they sold something like 100,000 Bitcoin. And they probably were doing the buy the rumor, sell the news as well. And they had a large glut of Bitcoin to actually sell. So hopefully a lot of that pressure is actually over because they sold the crest, and now that it's dropping back down, they might be waiting for another crest. Another source is obviously Silk Road. They just got another 60-something thousand Bitcoins last year from one of the founders of Silk Road, I believe. So they actually have quite a bit to sell. The government obviously is not selling them on the open market. They're auctioning them off, but that actually might be taking up some of the buy pressure from BlackRock and Grayscale. And BlackRock and Fidelity. We don't really know how much the government has. They've been auctioning them off in small batches since basically 2021. The latest batch, like 60-something thousand Bitcoins, I think they only auctioned off one batch. So they still might have tens of thousands of Bitcoins left. The schedule in which the government auctions off, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if anyone knows. But that's always kind of a danger when you have the government with that much of a batch of Bitcoins. And I don't think the government's keeping them for long-term plans. I think it would be smart for them to keep them for long-term assets and savings. That's stuff that they actually seized from Grayscale, but they are auctioning them off. And I bet like some of the ETFs are probably buying for that because that's like cheap Bitcoin right there from the government, which obviously is not good for us because we want them to buy either OTC or better yet, even spot market, but that kind of like gives them another outlet to actually buy the Bitcoins with. So that's no good. And last of all, there could be internal manipulation with the SEC. And like the SEC, even though they approved the Bitcoin ETF, they've been very, very negative towards the Bitcoin ETF. Gary Gensler, bless his little heart, has been trying to encourage people not to buy the Bitcoin ETF. I think he's just really, really mad at crypto, that it's actually making him look bad. And he's trying to take vengeance on crypto. I don't think it's actually going to work. I think in the end, it's making him look worse to everyone. But he's really trying to discourage people from investing in crypto. So like there might be some internal manipulation between the SEC, the big funds, the big hedge funds. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if someone related to the agency was actually directing all this. So there always is like maybe some internal manipulation that we can't count out. Obviously, the government's never really going to admit it if they do that. And I don't know if it actually goes on. But there's a lot of internal disruptions, and the SEC has made outward statements trying to discourage people to buy Bitcoin, even though it approved the ETF. They say they don't endorse it. They don't really agree with it, and he's really driving the point home that the courts essentially made him accept the ETF, and he doesn't think it's a good thing. So we have to be careful on that too, because there could be some governmental or internal manipulation. The other thing is, another good piece of news is Jim Cramer says Bitcoin's not going to find its bottom. And we know the inverse Cramer effect, so it might actually go up tomorrow. But I'm not really sure what he says actually has much of an effect. Yes, the inverse Cramer index generally is pretty good, but Cramer gets things right every once in a while too, although he's been really, really off the mark with Bitcoin. So we'll have to see what happens in the next couple of days or next couple of weeks. I do think in the next week or two, there's going to be plenty of action. And hopefully it actually stabilizes around 40K and starts to go up again. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.